Welcome to the deep dive. Looks like our listeners are really trying to wrap their heads around Micron technology and this whole AI thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating story.
We've got a ton of material you sent us, including, well, some pieces of a financial analysis video.
Okay,
So let's dive in.
sounds good.
What's so interesting about this, seemingly kind of boring chip maker that's all of a sudden, making headlines?
Well, I think what's so interesting is how a company like Micron, they've been around forever. This is like a mature industry.
Right.
And now they're kind of at the forefront of this like cutting edge technology, one of the biggest technological developments I think in our lifetime.
Okay, so let's unpack this, right? Micron, they make memory chips.
Yeah.
Dream and NAND.
Uh-huh.
Can you give us like a quick, memory chips 101? Like, what are these? Why do they matter?
So think of it this way. DRAM is like your computer's short-term memory. It's like the scratch pad for when it's doing calculations.
Okay, so that's GRAM.
And then NAND is the long-term memory. That's where your computer stores files, photos, the operating system. Like it's basically the hard drive,
Got it.
but in chip form.
Okay, so these are like essential components for any computing device.
Right.
But where does AI fit into all of this? What's changed?
That's where things get really interesting. AI, particularly like the kind of we're seeing now, the machine learning, deep learning, it requires a ton of data and a ton of processing power.
Right.
And this has created this huge demand for this specialized type of memory called high bandwidth memory, or HBM.
HBM, okay.
Exactly.
So from what I understand, Micron is like a major player in this HBM market.
Yeah. They are, along with SK Hynix, actually, they're the only two companies that are currently producing HBM.
Oh, wow.
So that puts them in a very, very strong position given, the growth that we're expecting from AI.
So this is kind of where Micron's story goes from like memory chip maker to potential tech giant.
Potentially, yeah.
Right, but they haven't always been in this position, right? Tell me a little bit about like their history. How did they get to this point?
So Micron was founded way back in the late 1970s.
Wow.
And their journey has really been, one of adaptation.
Okay.
They initially focused on DRAM,
Uh-huh.
then they transitioned into NAND, and they even dabbled in the PC market for a while.
They had a PC business.
They did.
Wow, that's so interesting.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah, that's like a totally different world than this like hyper-specialized, memory chip they're doing now.
Right, exactly. But the key takeaway there is that they eventually recognized, like, okay, memory, that's our core strength. That's what we're good at.
Yeah.
And they strategically focused on that. And this ability to adapt, to evolve in this like crazy, rapidly changing industry is something, really important to keep in mind as we think about like their future in the whole AI landscape.
And speaking of like competition, how has the memory chip market kind of evolved over time? And who are Micron's like main rivals?
Yeah, so the memory chip industry has gone through like really intense consolidation.
Oh, wow.
Like we've gone from like a dozen, maybe even more players down to just three. Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix.
Okay.
Those three now control like 95% of the global market.
Wow. That's a lot of market share concentrated in just three companies.
It's a lot, yeah.
What does that mean for Micron, competing against these giants like Samsung? Is that a good thing, a bad thing?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, fewer competitors could lead to, more stability, less cutthroat pricing.
Right.
But on the other hand, you worry about potential monopolies, lack of innovation. It's definitely a key point of debate for investors when they're, looking at Micron.
So where does Micron fit into this like power dynamic? Like what's their competitive strategy?
So unlike Samsung, which kind of aims for, dominance across many different product categories,
Right.
Micron has taken a more focused approach. Their specialty is low power memory.
Low power memory. Okay. Can you explain why that's such a critical area, especially in the like context of AI?
Yeah, so this has been a winning strategy for them, especially in the mobile phone market where, power efficiency is everything.
Right. Battery life.
Exactly, battery life. And as it turns out, that expertise in low power design is now incredibly valuable in the AI world where, energy consumption is a huge concern.
So it's like they were unknowingly preparing for the AI revolution by focusing on low power memory.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that's played out.
Yeah, it's kind of like this thing that might have seemed niche at the time.
Right.
Now it's like super important.
Exactly. Yeah, their low power DRAM is a key component in a lot of AI servers now, and that expertise translates really well to the development and production of HBM.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that there's this investor debate around Micron.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What are the bulls saying? What are the bears worried about?
So the bulls are really excited about Micron's potential in this AI market, especially because of, their dominance in HBM.
Mm-hmm.
Like the demand is just skyrocketing, and they're one of only two companies meeting that demand. So they believe this positions Micron for really explosive growth.
But couldn't that supply-demand advantage evaporate quickly if Samsung decides to jump in? How long can they realistically hold on to this edge?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of what the bears are worried about.
Okay, so what are some of their concerns?
So number one, they see the memory chip market as cyclical. Like they don't believe this growth is going to last.
Mm-hmm.
They're also worried about Chinese competition and the potential for Samsung to enter the HBM market and just crush prices.
So they're saying don't get caught up in the hype.
Yeah, they're basically saying don't get caught up in the hype. This is a cyclical industry, and Micron's stock is still being valued like a traditional, cyclical company rather than like a high growth tech company.
Right.
And that's a key point of contention that we'll need to dig into further.
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here. We've talked about Micron's history.
Uh-huh.
This kind of unique position they're in the memory chip market.
Right.
This early stage of the, investor debate. Where do we go from here? What other aspects of this story do we need to understand?
Well, I think to make an informed judgment on Micron, we really need to dive deeper into these bull and bear arguments, analyze the financials, assess the competitive landscape, and we also want to look at the broader trends shaping the memory chip industry and what they might mean for Micron's future.
Okay, so we've got this company, right, with a long history of adapting.
Yeah.
This unique position in this really consolidated market,
right,
and a product, these memory chips that are absolutely essential for this whole AI boom.
Yeah.
But there's this lingering question: is Micron's stock actually undervalued, or is the market right to be kind of cautious?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And I think to understand that we need to kind of dig deeper into this whole investor debate. You mentioned that the bears see Micron as a traditional cyclical company.
Right.
Can you kind of explain what that means in this context?
Well, from what I've read, it basically means that their fortunes are very closely tied to the ups and downs of the economy.
Okay.
So, when times are good, people buy more electronics, Micron's profits go up.
Right.
But then when things slow down, demand drops, and Micron really feels the pain.
Yeah, that's a great summary. The memory chip industry is notoriously cyclical, much like the, semiconductor industry as a whole.
Uh-huh.
And demand for memory is really tied to consumer spending on things like PCs, smartphones, even, the data centers that power the cloud.
So are the bears essentially saying don't get caught up in the AI hype. This party's not going to last forever?
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. They see the current AI boom as kind of a temporary surge in demand.
Okay.
And they worry that, Micron's stock price is kind of inflated by these unrealistic expectations.
Okay, so the bears are focused on the cyclical nature of the industry, the potential for a downturn. But what about the bulls? What are they why are they so confident that Micron is on the verge of something big?
Well, the bulls believe that Micron is more than just a cyclical company. They see it as a growth company.
Okay.
With a really bright future.
Uh-huh.
And they argue that Micron's, expertise in low power memory gives them this durable advantage in the AI market.
Okay.
Which is only going to grow in the coming years.
I can see the appeal of that argument, but the bears might say, okay, low power memory, that's great, but what happens when Samsung inevitably enters the HBM market and starts competing head to head with Micron?
Yeah, Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right?
It's true. Samsung's entry would definitely shake things up.
Yeah.
But the bulls believe that, Micron's early lead in HBM, combined with their deep expertise in low-power design, will give them a fighting chance, even against a giant like Samsung.
So the bulls are betting on Micron's ability to kind of maintain this technological edge, fend off the competition. But even if they manage to do that, doesn't the cyclical nature of the industry still pose like a pretty significant risk?
Yeah, no, that's a valid concern. Even if Micron executes flawlessly, a broader economic downturn could still, hurt their bottom line.
Right.
And this is where things get, tricky for investors trying to weigh the potential for growth against the, inherent risks of the industry.
Yeah. It seems like we need to kind of dig into Micron's financials a little bit to get a better sense of their resilience and their ability to, weather a potential storm. What are some of the key metrics we should be looking at?
So one metric that's often used to value companies is the price to earnings ratio, or PE ratio.
Okay.
And it essentially tells you how much investors are willing to pay for every dollar of earnings the company generates.
And from what I understand, Micron's PE ratio is relatively low compared to other tech companies.
Right.
So wouldn't the bulls see that as a sign that the stock is undervalued?
Absolutely, yeah. A low PE ratio can suggest that, investors are underestimating a company's future earnings potential.
Okay.
So the bulls would argue that the market isn't fully pricing in Micron's, growth prospects in the AI market.
But wouldn't the bears just say, well, the low PE ratio is justified because, Micron is a cyclical company?
Exactly, yeah.
This is just how the market is accurately reflecting the inherent volatility of the industry and the risk that Micron's earnings could, decline in the future.
Right. So the PE ratio by itself doesn't tell us the whole story.
Okay.
We need to look at a range of financial metrics, including Micron's revenue growth, their profit margins, their debt levels, and how much they're investing in research and development.
All right, so we need to take a holistic view of Micron's financial health to really make an informed judgment. And we also need to consider the competitive landscape.
Yeah.
How likely is it that Samsung actually enters this HBM market and kind of disrupts Micron's, current dominance?
Right. Well, that's a critical question, and there's no easy answer. I mean, Samsung has a history of aggressively pursuing new markets.
Right.
And they certainly have the resources and the expertise to become a major player in HBM.
So we need to keep a close eye on Samsung's moves. What about the potential threat from Chinese companies?
Yeah.
I know we touched on this earlier, but could you maybe elaborate a little bit on their progress and how they might impact Micron in the future?
Yeah, so right now, Chinese memory chip makers are primarily focused on kind of older generations of technology.
Okay.
They're still playing catch up, but they are investing heavily and making progress.
So they might not be a major threat today, but they could be down the line.
Right. Exactly.
How does that kind of potential competitive pressure factor into the bull and bear debate?
Well, I think the bears would point to the rising threat from China as another reason to be, cautious about Micron.
Okay.
They might argue that even if Micron fends off Samsung, they could eventually be overtaken by this wave of Chinese competitors.
Right, but the bulls might counter that Micron has this long history of innovation and adaptability, and that they'll continue to stay ahead of the curve, developing new technologies and finding ways to differentiate themselves from the competition, whether it's Samsung or Chinese companies.
Exactly, yeah. The bulls believe that Micron's, track record of innovation, combined with their strategic focus on low power memory, will enable them to maintain a competitive edge even as the landscape kind of evolves.
So it sounds like there's this fundamental difference in perspective here.
Yeah.
The bears are essentially extrapolating from the past, assuming that the industry will remain cyclical.
Right.
and that competition will inevitably kind of erode Micron's profits.
Uh-huh.
But the bulls are looking to the future, betting on the transformative potential of AI and Micron's ability to really capitalize on this kind of once in a generation opportunity.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It ultimately comes down to how you view the future of the memory chip industry and Micron's place within it.
Right.
Do you believe that the AI boom will fundamentally reshape the industry,
Yeah.
creating this new era of growth and profitability? Or do you think that the cyclical nature of the industry will inevitably reassert itself and kind of drag Micron back down to earth?
These are big questions.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to understand why there's so much, debate around Micron.
Uh-huh.
But before we try to answer those questions, I think we need to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the broader trends that are shaping the memory chip industry.
Okay.
What are some of the key forces that are going to, determine the winners and losers in this space?
So one major trend is just the insatiable demand for memory from cloud computing providers.
Right.
Companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're building these massive data centers to support their cloud services.
Right.
And those data centers require just vast amounts of memory, both DRAM and NAND.
Right. The cloud is essentially becoming the backbone of the digital economy.
It is, yeah.
So this trend is like a tailwind for Micron, like a potential source of long-term growth.
Absolutely, yeah. As more businesses move their operations to the cloud, the demand for memory is just going to continue to increase.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why the bulls are so optimistic about Micron's future.
But even with this growing demand, isn't there a risk of oversupply? What happens if too many companies ramp up production of memory chips, flood the market, and drive down prices?
Yeah, no, that's a valid concern, and it's something that investors need to monitor closely.
Right.
The memory chip industry has a history of these boom and bust cycles, driven in part by periods of oversupply.
So it's like a delicate balancing act.
It is, yeah.
Micron needs to invest enough to meet the growing demand, but not so much that they create a glut in the market and kill their own profits.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is where Micron's management team comes into play.
Right.
They need to make smart decisions about capacity expansion, technology investments, and pricing strategy.
Right.
Their ability to navigate these complexities will be crucial to Micron's long-term success.
It sounds like there's a lot riding on Micron ability to execute their strategy effectively.
Yeah.
But even if they do everything right, couldn't external factors, like a global recession or a slowdown in cloud adoption, like derail their plans?
Of course, yeah. No company is immune to macroeconomic forces or shifts in technology trends.
Right.
And the memory chip industry is particularly sensitive to global economic conditions, given that demand for memory is so closely tied to consumer spending and business investment.
So there's a lot of uncertainty here. It seems like we need to take a closer look at the specific risks and opportunities facing Micron, both in the short term and the long term.
Yeah, that's exactly what we'll do in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the key factors that could impact Micron's future, both positively and negatively.
Right.
And we'll try to assess their overall prospects in this rapidly evolving landscape.
Okay, so, we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
I mean, we've explored Micron's whole journey, the competitive landscape, this whole bull and bear argument swirling around them. Now, let's try to synthesize all this. What does it all mean for someone out there, trying to understand this company and its potential?
Well, I think that the first takeaway is that Micron is really in a pretty unique position.
Right.
They're one of only 3 major players in this, very consolidated market.
Uh-huh.
And their focus on low-power memory has kind of unexpectedly made them a key player in this whole AI revolution.
Yeah. And that AI angle really seems to be like the crux of this whole debate.
It is, yeah.
The bubbles think it's a game changer. It's going to propel Micron into this whole new era of growth. And the bears are a little bit more cautious,
Right.
pointing to, the cyclical nature of the industry and the threat of increased competition.
Yeah, and both sides have valid points.
Right.
Micron is riding this wave of demand for their HBM chips, but how long can they maintain that advantage?
Right.
What happens when Samsung enters the market? Can they fend off the Chinese players that are catching up quickly?
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions, yeah.
And we've also talked about, Micron's financials.
Uh-huh.
They have this relatively low PE ratio.
Right.
But we also talked about how we need to look beyond just that one metric to really get a sense of their true value.
Yeah, the PE ratio is a starting point, but we really need to dig deeper, look at, revenue growth, profit margins, debt levels, how much they're investing in R&D to stay ahead of the curve.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of this rapidly evolving memory chip industry.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the explosive growth of cloud computing driving demand.
Right.
But also this constant pressure to innovate, the risk of oversupply. Like it's a complex landscape.
It is, yeah.
And there's really no easy answer to this question of whether Micron is a buy, sell, or hold.
Nope.
Like we can't give you a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. It really depends on your own individual, risk tolerance, your investment goals, your time horizon.
Exactly.
But what we can do is kind of equip you with the knowledge to make that informed decision yourself.
Right.
And I think this deep dive has really highlighted those key factors to consider.
Uh-huh.
The potential of the AI market, the cyclical nature of the industry, the competitive landscape, and Micron's financial health.
Yep.
We've also seen how Micron has adapted and evolved over its long history.
They have, yeah.
From focusing on DRAM to embracing NAND, and then strategically positioning themselves in the low power memory space.
Right.
And I think that history of adaptability is something to really keep in mind as you weigh those potential risks and rewards.
Yeah.
Can they continue to innovate? Can they stay ahead of the competition?
The big questions.
That's the big question. So where do we go from here? What are some specific things that our listeners should be watching for to see how this Micron story kind of unfolds?
Well, I think there are a few key things to keep an eye on.
Okay.
First, track Samsung's moves in the HBM market. If they enter aggressively, it could put pressure on Micron's margins.
Right.
Second, watch the progress of those Chinese memory chip makers.
Mm-hmm.
Are they closing the technology gap? Are they gaining market share?
And then, of course, we need to pay close attention to Micron's own, financial performance.
Yeah.
Are they meeting their revenue and earnings targets? Are they maintaining healthy profit margins? Are they investing enough in R&D to stay competitive?
Exactly, yeah. And it's also worth monitoring the broader macroeconomic environment.
Right.
A global recession, a slowdown in cloud adoption. Those things could significantly impact demand for memory chips. And that's going to affect Micron's bottom line.
So there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Micron story is far from over. It's gonna be an exciting ride.
It will be.
And we've only just begun to explore the possibilities.
Well, this deep dive has given you a solid foundation.
Right.
But the learning doesn't stop here. Continue to research, to analyze, and just stay informed about the trends that are shaping the memory chip industry and the broader tech landscape.
And remember, investing is ultimately about making informed decisions based on your own, assessment of the risks and opportunities. We've given you the tools, the insights, but it's up to you to decide what it all means for your own investment strategy.
Exactly. So keep asking questions, stay curious, and remember, knowledge is power.
Love that.
The more you understand, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this complex market and make smart decisions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Micron technology.
Yeah.
I hope you found it insightful and engaging. And until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing.